Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are back for another live broadcast right here, coming from yours truly, Kev Baker, over in Smart City, Glasgow, under the Data Dome, no less. Yes, and a big thank you to everyone tuning in today to Truth Frequency Radio, tfrlive.com, the home of the Kev Baker Show. And that allows us to go all the way from America to Australia, which is going to be very, very apt for today's show, and just about every other country in between there. And have I got an amazing show lined up for all of you here tuned in live today. So whether you're at the home website of tfrlive.com, maybe you're listening on TalkStream Live, Paranormal Radio app, wherever you are, whenever you are, a massive, huge, warm welcome to the show. Before I bring on today's guests, a little quick update I just caught there before we went live, and it's going to be very, very fitting for today's conversation. And it's the latest on the UFO report. And it would seem we were right. And I hate to say we told you all so, but we did think there would be an element of problem, reaction, solution to all of this. And I can tell you that one of the senators that was involved in the briefings today, his name is, I don't have his name here, but he actually says, quote, "There's something going on that we can't handle." So get ready for big budget requests for the Space Force. Get ready for them probably trying to scare the death out of us, saying it's either aliens, Russia, or China, and all that jazz. And we'll bring you all the latest on that report when it does come out. But it fits in with today's show because today's guests are returning guests. I have to admit, they're two of my favourites. They're joining us all the way from Australia. It's Evan and Stephen Strong. Now, maybe you were here for the last broadcast. If you weren't, you can catch it in the archive or over on YouTube. But they were talking about an amazing event that took place at Uluru just a few months ago. And it was an event that they had been not promising something would happen, but they thought something very significant would happen on that day in December just last year. And they blew all our minds by showing us UFO footage at the time of something flying over Uluru during the ceremony that hundreds of people turned up to take part in. And the fact that anyone managed to take part in that ceremony is actually very, very good going, as we're going to find out as today's show goes on. Because the guys are going to be touching on the Uluru UFO. We're going to be hearing all about their next upcoming conference as well. Our Alien Ancestry, Chapter 12, I believe it is. And for anyone that's new here, you might not have heard of Evan or Stephen Strong before. Well, Stephen is a secondary school teacher with a background in archaeology and education. And Evan has a background in sociology and psychology. Now, they've spent many years learning and living with the Bunjalung Language Confederation, the Gimiloroi people of northern New South Wales, and the Ramajeri of South Australia. Now, their main brief is to prove through scientific fact that which the elders insist is true. And they've assembled facts about archaeological finds and also early contact accounts, genetics, serpent myths, dreaming stories, Amerindian myths, parallels in religious texts, and they've turned that into one coherent story. And we call that the Out of Australia theory. So without wasting any more time listening to me, there they are. Evan, great to see you again. Tell you, dude, you send my fans wild. You've got a big following in the Kev Baker Show audience, and you embarrass me because I've got radio face, so I'm going to hide behind my microphone today. Stephen, it's great to see you as well again, brother. And I can't thank you enough because you guys have got up at what I call dark o'clock to come on the show here. 7 a.m. over in Australia. Hats off to you guys. And it's just fantastic to have you both back here. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you, mate. And let us congratulate you for your Scottish original pronunciation. You got 2 of the 3 words basically right, didn't you?
I know, I was well
very impressive. None of our American friends can get their heads around any of them. No. The Bunjalung and Ramanjeri were well done, and the Gamilaroi, well, you wavered a bit on that one, but still that's a great job.
I did. That's because I think it's either my Uncle Donnie or Auntie Luna. That's where they're from. So
he's got a
because
bit of training.
because I was trying so hard, it went all wrong. But guys, catch us up on everything that's been going on because you guys are prolific. I mean, you write articles that really are long essay form, really in depth. But not only that, I love it. I actually love it. And not only that, but you're doing conferences all the time. And on behalf of the audience, before we get going, I just want to thank you. Really, properly thank you for the work you're doing. You've provided me personally with some of the highlights over the past year on the show, and I can't thank you enough for the work that you're doing. And I can only imagine how hard it is being white fellas trying to uncover all of this. The Australian government on your back, the Pentagon on your back as well. Guys, hats off to you both.
Well, thank you for that. I just one small thing is that, strangely enough, that I'm not white. I'm actually original, but that happens a lot in this country because you've got to remember when the British, which you're probably fairly familiar with, when they came here, their first intention was to wipe the place out of the original people here. So you'll find there's a lot of people who are original in this country. They don't even know it. It's part of the deal. But you're right. There has been some fascinating developments with this UFO evolving story. So much so that we're primarily changing the general theme of our presentations now because it's become such a prominent issue. And just to sort of pick up where we went from before, for those who aren't aware, we were involved in that ceremony, and there were around about somewhere between 15 to 20 million people that were involved at the same time. And I will make the point, and you did make it yourself, that I want to thank all those people because the one thing we promised them that we said definitely was going to happen with that ceremony was nothing. We weren't sure it was even going to happen. And every time we made clear to people that if you come out in the middle of the night, as most people did, and you stand in the freezing cold.
Sometimes snow.
Sometimes snow, sometimes frost. What we can offer you is a maybe. It could happen. So I've got to be honest, and we were very honest all the way through because of a lot of things that were going on. It was a maybe. But, you know, it's funny. I didn't know for quite some time exactly when the Pentagon made their announcement that they were going to actually investigate the UFO phenomena. And it turned out it happened within 12 hours of that ceremony being successful. And I wanted to sort of go down that path a bit with you because I think it's really important to understand that people might think this sort of stuff sounds quite bizarre and a little bit out left field, which it is. But I would put it to you that if the American government, the Australian government, and one of the largest multinationals in Australia were all contriving at the same time to either A, make sure the ceremony didn't happen, or B, if once it happened, then try and destroy it, still to this day, it becomes more obvious to me that the footage we've got has got a lovely background. And what I would like to talk about, if I can, to begin with, is, first of all, that the Pentagon, and a lot of people, when the Pentagon made their announcement, a lot of people were saying the same thing. Don't trust them. I don't trust them. It's very much like a wolf in sheep's clothing, which is what it was. And I know a lot of people were saying they're going to set up a false flag alien attack. Well, they got that wrong. And you've got to remember, ladies and gentlemen, when thing comes through electronic medias, the social medias, it's not always the truth. And that was obviously never the Pentagon's intention. And we were discussing before we started that what they've done to this is they've said, well, it's not ours.
No.
No, it doesn't belong to us. It's not special ops. And I know you've all been thinking that, but we're going to come clean. We're going to tell one truth. And I've got to make the point, this was the only truth they said. They said it's not ours. And actually, we got one article, because there was only one article in a newspaper in the whole of Australia about the Pentagon announcement.
Is it page 45?
Page 45 on the Sydney Morning Herald. And the heading was that aliens were not linked to UFOs. That was the heading. But the whole article after that heading was about the fact that the Pentagon said, it's not ours and we don't know whose it is. But they actually managed to make an article to say it's not alien. And then the whole of the article was saying it could be. But what was interesting is it could be an alien, but it's more likely, ladies and gentlemen, to be those naughty Russians or the Chinese doing it again. And it changed the narrative from that point on, because we both discussed the fact, and you've just mentioned it there, we've heard of many of these hawks running around to the media saying, we've got a problem, ladies and gentlemen, because their technology is better than ours, and if they engage us, we'll lose. And we're no longer the great superpower. We're now a minor power, and one of these groups, or both of them, are above us. And that is brilliant. I've got to give them credit. They've taken the UFO story and they know that they're coming, and they've turned it into something now that when they do come, people are going to cringe and they're going to be fearful and say, my God, it's the Chinese, they're going to kill us and I hate them all. They've actually managed to divide people more than they were supposed to. In fact, they're great at doing this. Now, what's interesting in this story is that they're going around, and you mentioned it too, saying we need more money. We need more money for development of wonderful machines that can kill, and we need more money in our defence so we can go around and pry and steal information from other people. And of course, they're both noble causes, Kev. Let's be honest, that's really what the Pentagon really do. And I admire them for being very good at those two things. But I want people to think about something. The UFO phenomenon has been around for 50 years, ever since the Second World War. I mean, it was around before then, but became noticeable and people spoke about it from 1945 onwards. What were the Chinese doing in 1945? Well, they didn't even have a revolution then. It happened in 1947, right? So let's start from there. And straight after the revolution, when Mao took over, the first thing they did was they invested all their money in UFO research. No, they didn't. They didn't do anything like that. They were basically living a subservient lifestyle, and over a period of time, they slowly became technologically advanced. And around about this century, they started to accelerate. But don't tell me before then they had the technology, interest, or money to make things like this. They did not. So please, if you're going to lie, at least make it consistent. It has to be the Russians. It's Putin, isn't it, Evan? He's done it. Come on, it's him. It can't be the Chinese, because they could not have been involved in this earlier on. So my second question is that's the first fault in their logic. The second one's greater. The American intelligence network, which linked in with a lot of other networks around the world, said that it could be the Chinese or Russians, but they didn't supply one photograph, a sat-nav photograph. They didn't supply film of one of these facilities. They didn't supply a statement of a scientist who's gone rogue. And they've done that every other time. They supplied nothing. And what they've told us is for 50 years, it's been the Russians and Chinese have been doing this, and we don't have one scintilla of proof. But if you double our budget, we'll still give you nothing. But trust us, because we've done nothing so far and failed miserably, and we've come up with a rumour, if you give us more money, we might find something, but we haven't yet after 50 years. So I think that's a good investment, ladies and gentlemen. I think with a track record like that, where they haven't got it right for 50 years, and they're concerned and worried, but they can't give us one scintilla of proof, I think we should invest in them, because they sound like a wonderful group. But that, to me, is the height of stupidity. And Einstein said this, if you keep doing something time after time after time and it doesn't work, don't keep doing it. Well, the Pentagon has said, no, don't listen to Einstein, listen to us. It's probably Russian or Chinese.
And you know,
Well,
Stephen, from a military point of view, I was in the army just over 4 years, but I find it ridiculously funny that we would honestly contemplate that the US military would release footage of some kind of advanced technology that their enemies have, which would tip their hat to the enemies that they know that they've got. It doesn't make any sense militarily at all.
Yes, man. What they're basically saying is, come on, we know you've got it, put us away. And they've really given up the fact that they're saying to their enemy that we can't fight you. You're right. They're literally saying, if you wish to invade us right now, we're telling you now, we can't equal your technology. We don't have it. And we're fearful and we don't have the money to do anything at the moment, and we're going to think about doing something. What they're saying is, well, right now they've got nothing, but if we give them enough time, well, they might fix that up and then we'll go back to equal. We better go now. You're right. From a military viewpoint, whoever made that announcement should lose their commission, because they've actually given up the fact to the Russians that they don't have anything to fight against them. And while we keep insulting the Russians and Chinese, which we do on a daily basis, we're actually antagonising them and now telling them, if you hit us, we can't hit you back. That's not how the schoolyard bully works, is it?
No.
But now they have. So, first up, we've got the Pentagon. Now, we're going to claim that they made that announcement because the ceremony was successful. And a lot of people are going to sit there at the moment and say, well, yeah, that's one piece of evidence, but on its own, it could be a coincidence. And I'm prepared to agree with everyone there that it could be a coincidence, but I'd like to talk about Qantas now and the Northern Territory government. And now, Kev, you might be aware too that there's a issue going around the world and it's called COVID.
I certainly am, my friend. I certainly am, yes.
So what happened was, in Australia, mind you, I must point out for the people in Australia, we have one COVID case in the whole of Australia, and we're thinking of locking down New South Wales, aren't we? Yeah, we have one case. So we're doing it very bad. It's the first case in New South Wales in 40 days, and there's chaos at the moment, and everyone's frantically running, and the media is full of the fact there is one case. And the week before, for a whole week, there was a Victorian who snuck into New South Wales, and the whole of New South Wales was locking down and becoming terrorised because he came through the whole of New South Wales. But luckily enough, no one caught it. Not a soul caught it. But so you can see we're in a very bad state at the moment because we have one active case of COVID in the whole of the country. So we're in a bad way. I don't know about the rest of the world, but we're doing it tough down here. Well, that's basically, we're talking about the background setting. You have to talk about that first, obviously. So obviously we're doing it slightly better than other countries, but I can assure you one thing, Kevin, don't worry, even though we have no cases whatsoever and haven't for most of this year, we still are as terrorised as everyone else. They've managed to ramp that up. I find it fascinating how they can ramp up one case to close down the whole of a state, but they can, and they can do it. I remember we had a massive outbreak in Melbourne, didn't we? Yeah. In Victoria. And they were locked down for weeks and weeks on end. No one could come out or do a thing. And all up over the whole of the time this happened, they've now just opened up. They had 56 cases, I think, over about 6 weeks. One person went to hospital. It wasn't intensive, went there for a couple of days, and that's the sum total of the terror here. But it's clever because they have taken over everything. And getting back to what happened at the ceremony, I want to explain to people something that happened the day before when the government made one final attempt, along with a multinational, to destroy the ceremony we were doing at Uluru. They were trying right down to the last moment to find some way to destroy this. Now, yes, we were fed the wrong time, and on the day before we found out the proper time, and we had to try and contact 15 million people. They've been doing that stuff all the way through, which is why we thought it was never going to happen properly. That was a constant thing. If we went through the things that tried to block us from putting this out, it'd take the next 2 hours, wouldn't it?
It would, yeah.
But we'll go to the day before. And what happened was there was a conference, the Cosmic Consciousness Conference, that's really hard to say quickly, at Uluru, run by some people, Mick and Catherine Hand, and they put that up 18 months before and had no idea that the elders at Uluru were going to hold a ceremony there. So I want to talk about that day, the day before, and the beginning of the 21st in Australia, and talk about 3 events that took place. The first one was that on the afternoon of the 20th, before the 21st, we're at Uluru, and we're having a conference there, and there were about 350 people there, and it was stopped. And the manager of the resort came in and said, I have to stop the ceremony and read this out to everyone situated here. Okay? And that was a bit of a shock, because that wasn't on the agenda, was it? No, no one said that was going to happen. So we sat down and we listened. And what this gentleman did was he had a letter that had been signed off by the Northern Territory government. Now, in Australia, we have states which are independent groups, and then we have territories which are still run by the federal government. Now, Canberra is a territory, and so is Northern Territory. It is not an independent group. They are basically ran by the federal government, and they administrate things, okay? So the Northern Territory government had signed off on this, and this is what they said. What had happened in Australia at that time is there'd been one outbreak. We had one small outbreak everywhere, and it was in the northern beaches of Sydney. And what the governments decided to do was not lock down the whole of Sydney, but lock down the northern part of Sydney. And that meant there was about 12, 15 people who were coming to the conference from that area. Well, they cancelled. And one of the speeches, Barry Eaton, had to do a video link because he was in the northern part of Sydney. But the rest of Sydney was open. That's very important you understand this at the start. So people from Sydney, because that was the biggest area for the conference, they got on their planes, they weren't checked. They got to Uluru, as we all did. And there was no one checking us with those electronic sort of heating things or tongues or nothing. Just walk straight in. You can come in, okay? We don't have that sort of stuff here. No mask. As we sat in the plane, nobody had a mask on, okay? So it was very casual. Everyone was welcome. The people from Sydney were welcome. There wasn't a problem. But lo and behold, the Northern Territory government made an independent decision and didn't announce it anywhere else in Australia, that the whole of Sydney was now banned from entering Northern Territory. And the people who were sitting there were told, you're no longer wanted here. And we're sending basically a retinue of police. About 40 police are coming down tomorrow to deal with you.
Heard rumours the army might be involved.
There was rumours the army was involved. They were going to bring down a testing unit, and everyone from Sydney was now designated as a legal leper. And what that meant was they were not going to be fed. If you wanted to be fed, even at a takeaway restaurant, place there, a noodle shop there, I saw it up the front. If you're from Sydney,
hold that thought, Stephen. Hold that thought. We're right on the break. We'll be right back. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and let's just dive right back into it. Stephen, you had written down where you've left off. I tell you, it's so interesting listening to you guys during the break. I'm fearful I miss coming back from one of these breaks, I'm telling you. So listen, you were telling us about how they were about to send down the police, the military. Damn, dude.
They're all coming. They're all coming. And what's happened is, as I said, there were signs up, even at the takeaway shop. You ring us and we'll deliver at the door, but do not open the door, you know, because that COVID will jump on top of them and eat them and then kill them straight away. So this is what happened. So what happens is in the conference room, after they've been told this, we've got people going up the front saying, we're going to ring up lawyers, we're going to contest this, and we're going to fight this because it's illegal. And I'm thinking to myself while they're saying that, Okay, we've got a group of individuals who are fighting the government legally. Good luck with that one, boys and girls, because I've seen that before and that doesn't work out. But what it did was, we were going to do a ceremony there with 350 people. It would have been the closest ceremony to Uluru outside the one they were doing there. Okay? So then what happens is the people there are freaking out. They're stressed and distressed. Our friends Shane and Annette, they got instant migraines, didn't they?
Yep.
And all the people from Sydney are walking around like death warmed up. I had a lady who came up to me and said, my 2 children are being minded by my parents at the moment, because what they also told them, mate, is not only did the Northern Territory government get involved, at the same time, this letter was signed off by Qantas. Jetstar is the domestic part of Qantas. They joined in together and they signed off to say this. They said, we will be sending 1 plane from Sydney up to Uluru. It will be empty because we don't want anyone to catch your stuff. They're all going back to Sydney and came from Sydney, by the way. And if you don't get on, you will have to self-isolate at Ulura Resort, by the way, which cost $800 per night for 2 weeks. Man, that could sell people into, basically they become homeless with that.
Yeah.
That was the threat. And if you didn't get on the 8 o'clock plane, there will be no more coming. We are not flying to Uluru anymore. Now, remember, around the world and in Australia, everywhere else, even in Sydney, it was just the Northern Rivers was locked down, but this was taken by a group.
Beaches.
The Northern Beaches, rather, was locked down. So what then happens? In the morning, we wake up, and lo and behold, all from the people from Sydney were in the restaurants having breakfast, weren't they, Evan?
Yes.
And I rang up Shane and Annette and said, what's going on? He said, we're allowed to go out. And then we got a phone call. And the phone call, each person got a phone call. Every unit got a phone call. And the question was this: do you reside in the Northern Beaches of Sydney? And we said no. And Annette and Shane said no. So guess what? They all had breakfast. Nothing was said. The police came. Evan, you heard about that. Could you tell them what happened with the police? Not the 40. No.
There were 2, and I think there were 2 paramedics, and I saw them leaning against a tree in the shade. And then one person had the sniffles and went to go get tested, and they were fine. That was it.
That was it. That was the sum total. Then at 9 o'clock, there's an announcement made by Jetstar. Please ignore what we said yesterday. Service as usual. That's it. That's after the other plane left. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I would say to you that what we've got there is a multinational company, which is Qantas, and the federal government and the state territory government have conspired to lie about something that's not true. And as soon as they were hoping 150, 200 people would get on that plane, now 50 did. And I want to make the point, Kev, I'm not criticising those 50, because that woman who told me her kids, she won't be doing Christmas with the kids, she asked me what to do. I said, get on the plane. I said, your children, they grow up one day, mate, and you won't see them again. Yep. You don't want to miss your Christmas with your kids. Get on the plane. Every one of those people, they had put so much stress and distress and angst and concern and frustration and made them feel awful. That was their job. What they wanted was to destroy this ceremony completely. And that's absolutely definite. Now, for the people who are still thinking maybe that's all a coincidence, let me close with this. On the 21st of December at 10 o'clock, a decision was made to close Uluru for the first time ever to the public. Never happened before. And then what happened was it was closed for the next day too. Now that happened to be the time the ceremony was taking place, ladies and gentlemen, and that they closed it at 10 o'clock in the morning and went round and rounded everyone up and shooed them away. I've checked, that's never happened before. Now what was happening was they were doing their ceremony and they didn't want anyone to get in the way. And they knew what was going on outside. They could see what was happening to us. So they just said, right then, we close it to everyone and kick them all out. So they weren't going to be stopped. They could see what was going on here. So ladies and gentlemen, when you put that all together, you start to get a lot of circumstantial evidence that something big is happening here, that we can look at the Pentagon, we can look at the Australian government, we can look at the Northern Territory federal government and Qantas, And they all seem to be involved in this together. And what is the combined aim of this involvement? Is to create fear, concern, and make sure that ceremony didn't happen. Now, people might think, well, yes, but where's the proof? And as you know, last time we spoke about the fact, and we're going to put these things up for the people who haven't seen it. We spoke about the fact that the Schumann resonance, and we want to get back to that in a sec, don't we, Evan?
Oh, yeah.
We've shown that at 7:31, at Ukraine University had it running from 0.3 to 0.6, and at 7:32 it went up to 30. So it went up by 100-fold and stayed there for 4 hours. We've also shown a film at 7:32 of Uluru exploding in white light that goes upward into the sky but doesn't touch the rock. And no one saw it, but it was filmed. And that energy explosion took place then. So those things we've shown people. And then we've shown people the picture of this flying object. Oh, there's the Schumann resonance. While we're at the Schumann resonance, Evan, shouldn't we go a little bit further and explain to people what's happened in the last couple of days?
Yeah, well, they've had a blackout incident where they weren't able to measure what was going on. And I've read a description from someone talking about what that means.
And we'll put that up on the day.
Yeah. And what that means is they won't be able to measure it. It's off the charts, basically.
It's measured up. They've measured 1,000 on 6,000 on one occasion. The whole thing went black, and all the different colours that they measured, there's about 5 different colours that give different indications. They had nothing. And then it came back online again. And they thought the machine had broken down. They thought the Americans had interfered. It was that high that it could not register on any machine they've got. And don't forget, they measure up to 10,000. It was above that. And it was massive for a long period of time. And back a couple of days before that, about a week before that, it was peaking at virtually the same time in the afternoon every day.
Yeah.
Now, this has never happened before. So the Schumann resonance is a resonance of the vibration of the Earth, and it is now powering at levels we've never seen on this planet. So we had all that information, and then we got the UFO flying above. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that because we've done some more research on that, because the naysayers wrote back and explained us all sorts. That's the picture there. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that picture was taken, and let me explain how that was obtained. A person called Amanda Smith said she did something to the film and she slowed it down 4 times. She said there's 4 frames per second or stuff like that. And what she did was, at 120 and 121, in the 4th frame in each second, that's the UFO. But on the other 3 frames, it's not there. So we're going to play both sets. We're first of all going to play that again, and I'm going to make the point. Check out 120, 121. No, we can't see it. You can, but it's only there for 1 frame out of 4 in 120 and 121. Now, the people who claim, and I'll go through what they've claimed it is, and one of the ones they've said is it's special ops. It could be. It could be special ops. Mind you, I've got to make the point. We've got film. We've got a photograph, a radar photograph of all the planes in Northern Territory at 7:32. And there's only one. And it's a Jetstar plane flying from Adelaide to Darwin, and it's 400 k's away. So it's not a plane. There it is there, ladies and gentlemen. You can see the marker for the plane there. We found that, and we've got that up. We then contacted the helipad, last helicopter out, because people have called it a plane, a Cessna, by the way, not just a plane, but a Cessna. Other people have said it's a helicopter. No, last helicopter route was at 4 o'clock and it came back at 5. It's not a helicopter. And by the way, it's against the law to fly over Uluru with a plane or a helicopter anyway. So those things, it can't be. It just couldn't be. So what we've got is we've got an object that's flying through the air so slow, if it was a plane, it would fall out. But it disappeared. When this gentleman who filmed it, and by the way, we're going to do an interview on our next one with the person who filmed it and her wife together, and what happened to the night before when they knew something about aliens was going to happen. But I'm not going to talk about that now, because on the next day he went out, and by the way, the people who have criticised the fact that he didn't film the UFO, which he didn't, He didn't film it for two reasons. And you'll find out in the article, one of them is he's virtually legally blind. Bear that in mind when you criticise the man. He's virtually legally blind, so he did a bloody good job considering his eyes don't work properly. And secondly, there were thousands of people there, and we all looked up at the sky. None of us looked at the UFO because we'd had a 10K palette of colours up there to look at. Why would you be looking at a dot? No one saw it. And it's well known, your eyes don't. You see things, but you don't. It doesn't register in your brain. So this is not a problem. So what we found is, if the people who say it's special ops, it's possible, but it isn't. Because what was that UFO doing when it disappeared for 3 shots, then reappeared for a fraction of a second twice? What technology are we talking about there? Was it crossing to another dimension, which I think it was, and that's the residual image we see as it goes? But whatever happened there, where a plane can disappear from the camera's view for 3 frames and reappear for 1, is way past the technology of this world. I don't care whether it's Russian, Chinese or Ukrainian or even Australian or Tasmanian. We don't have technology that can make a plane disappear in front of a camera for 3 frames and reappear for 1 to 2 seconds in a row. So for me, that information was the one that really has pushed us on this different path we're running down. Now, my issue is, Kev, very simply, after seeing all the film we've got, and of course, you know, we have that wonderful picture of Glasgow when it's raining columns of light.
It's always raining in Glasgow, guys. It's just the thing, you know.
Yeah, it sounds like Tasmania.
When the sun comes out here, it's like a UFO because we're that used to not seeing it. You know? The orange thing in the sky.
Oh, mate. Oh, we're doing it tough here, mate. We're in the middle of winter. It's 23 degrees today, Celsius, which is about 65, 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's clear skies, so we're doing it tough down here too, mate.
Sunbathing material for Glaswegians, man. We would all be out the back half naked in weather like that, you know?
Mate, I'm walking around in a jumper and tracks. It's 23 degrees. We think that's freezing cold where we are, mate. I can't visualise numbers. I can't visualise single numbers for the day for a temperature readout. That couldn't happen. That wouldn't happen. But anyway, we do it tough here. We live in 28 degrees on the, yeah, it's pretty warm here. We live in a rainforest. But getting back to the important part of this story, ladies and gentlemen, we've now got a situation now where I believe the Pentagon in their own way have done us a huge favour. For all the lies, what they've at least said is they've said it could be. It probably isn't, but it could be. Now, that really does open up the story. Now, for me and for yourself, the if about whether UFOs have been here ever since the beginning is given. It's done. The fact that it's also in the Bible, we'll let Paul do that, but he's adamant. And don't forget, he's the guy in Australia that does the in-service courses on the Old Testament. And I can tell you it's caused a lot of grief for the Anglican Church because they won't get rid of him. But what all his friends have said is, you can still be our friend, but we refuse to read your books. They won't look at it. So they're going to do what humans normally do when something happens they don't like. They stick their head in the sand and hope it goes away. It doesn't work that often. But the interesting part in this story, mate, is we've now decided to do something else. We want to explain or look at and develop the why.
Yeah, the why is the most important part.
Not the if, but the why.
Yeah, we're beyond if now. If isn't even a question anymore. It's like, don't waste time with that. Exactly.
No. That's why we'll keep putting all this evidence up each time, because we put it up at the start of our talks, and if people have seen it before, you know we've got new stuff to do that. We do that so when our speakers come after, no one's got that residual doubt that's been put in there with the tin hats and the little green men and all that crap. It's gone. Remember, that same group that made that announcement have killed people for saying UFOs exist, have destroyed their careers, have threatened them, have done all sorts of things to them for 50 years because they even had the hide to say UFOs existed. And now they're saying, well, it could be there. You can't believe them because they're lying. So it becomes why. And I want to make the point, we are talking about alien groups from all over the cosmos that have invested tens of thousands, maybe millions of years in this one miserable planet where humans spend all their time trying to kill each other. And I remember asking my elders way back, why would they even bother? And he gave me a rather long answer, which we won't get through today, but he gave me a reason why they're here. And that is what we need to get our head around. That's the whole purpose of this equation. Now, why was that UFO idling above Uluru at that time? I can give you the answer to that. It's one of two. It was there to help make that 1.5 second piece of film we've got of where Uluru explodes and the magic box is turned on. It's there to even watch it, confirm it, or assist in it being turned on. That's the why. We can do that for sure, and that's what that part's about. But let's go further. Let's talk to them. Now, this is where it gets tricky, and this is where I'm going to ask anyone that comes to our conference to give the same leap of faith that 15 million to 20 million people did when they meditated, because we said to them, we can't prove this is real. Now, what we have done is I think we've gone very close to proving that something happened at Uluru. Now, what we need to do is talk to them. Now, that's where it gets a bit interesting, because since we've been doing this, whenever we go on country, we always take a psychic on country with us. That's a rule, because we know that we're going on to sacred country where the spirits are there and we need to hear their story. That's just the way we do things, and we've done that every time. Yes, we have got the best laboratories and the best machines analysing our stuff, and we do science, but we do esoteric science. That's part of how we do things. Now, I can tell you, we've had some great psychics take us on the country. We've had some that just say, let's walk that way, there's something over there, and they find it, don't they?
Yeah, and off we wander.
We just wander, where are we going? I know there's something over here, and that's how we do it. And ladies and gentlemen, because we've found so many sites, don't tell me it doesn't work, because it does. We don't go there with a map. We go there with people who can sense their way. But of all the psychic groups, the ones I've always had the most issue with, mate, are the channelers. You know, the ones who speak in a voice and say, I'm speaking on behalf of Bruce or Gary or Brian or someone, and I'm telling you this story. For me, it's always been, yeah, right, okay, I could do that too. And we all could. So I've always had an issue with that. But I met one psychic in Australia, her name is Valerie Barrow, and she channeled someone, and I always thought, yeah, maybe, but I got to meet her. I got to know her, and she's in her 90s at the moment, and she'd never lie. That's what I do know about her. She would never lie. So what that did is it left me open to the concept of a channeler, which leads me up to Leah, who's been working with us for quite some time, and she's spoken on a few occasions. And I'm going to tell you that yesterday I asked her contact, who's in the Galactic Council, isn't he? His name is Mesref. I had an issue with a person and I needed some guidance, and I didn't know how to deal with this person, and his advice was brilliant, and I've used it. But to begin with, what I did with Leah was this. I asked her questions on information where she didn't have the answer, and we did. And I did that probably a dozen times. And every time I said, go and ask Mesref. He says, if he knows everything, he'll be able to tell you the answer. And every time we got the answer back. And I kept thinking, well, how could you have known this? You couldn't, because I've never told you. And we did this time after time after time. I wanted to be utterly convinced this woman is legitimate. And she's going to tell a story how she's been taken over by aliens from the age of 6, and they've taken her away sometimes, they've spoken to her, and they are in constant contact with her. So what we're doing is this. From now on, I'm going to start asking questions. I'm going to ask 8 questions. I'm going to give them to her in a couple of days. She's going to be in contact with Mesref, write down the answers, and then she and I are going to have a conversation about those 8 questions. I'm going to read them out. She's going to tell us what he said. Then we might discuss it, move on to the next one. And once we've done those 8, I walk away and Evan comes in. And what he's going to do is he's going to select 2 questions, because we're leaving this open to everyone who participates in this particular conference. Evan's going to choose 2 of those questions, and for those who feel they should have been chosen, you can abuse Evan, not me. It wasn't my choice. He made a bad decision and didn't pick your question. So this time I don't get attacked. And he's going to read out those 2 questions, and Leah will also ask Mesra for an answer to them. And we're going to make that a segment. And what I'm going to try and do is every time we do another conference, we'll pick up the current state of affairs and we'll ask them for their opinions on what's going on, what's happening, what's coming in the future. I can let people in on one secret I am going to ask them about, is they are claiming it's them who are turning on the Schumann resonance. They're doing it, and the reason they're doing it is they want this to hurry along. That's why they're ramping it up. They are becoming impatient. They want this to come to a conclusion. And they want that day in the future when the Earth will be running at 2 resonances at once. One that will be obviously in the thousands and one that'll be 0.3. And that will be the moment, Kev, where every soul will judge themselves. And they will gravitate towards the higher or lower resonance. This is how this finishes, ladies and gentlemen. And then what happens, because you cannot have 2 realities on one physical plane, the lower resonance will fade away and disappear completely. And every soul that is locked into that resonance goes with it. Now, that's the story. That is the unscientific part that I can't fully understand. But I'm watching what's happening around here, and most of this I don't understand. I'm just reporting it now. We both are.
Yeah.
That's how this is supposed to finish. That's the end game in this, and that's what these, and I'm going to be asking them about that. I'm specifically going to ask them about that in more detail. I want to get clarification on that. That is what this is all about. This is not just we're here, there'll be a change, and what we'll do is it'll be like these movies when the world changes and a lot of people go and then we go back and do the same things again. It's not going to be like that. It's completely different this time around. What is going to happen is the world will become magic. Now, I need to make a point here, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of people have said, so they're going to hell. You know, the Christian thing and a lot of other traditional religions. And the answer is that is not right. This is ridiculous to even say that. And I want to make the point. I want you to understand something. My understanding is the percentage of people who stay might be into the doubles, maybe just. It might hit double figures, but it's not going to be major. It's going to be minor. And so many people are leaving here. But you've got to understand one thing. The people who leave here will be Soros, it will be Gates, and it'll be the next in line that missed out by that much. By a minuscule second. The person who was next in line, I want you to focus on that. You can't punish them the same as the people who are in the cabal. That's just not fair. It doesn't happen that way. What actually happens is once this Earth ascends, I'm talking about the Earth, not us. We're just guests on it. And it runs in the thousands. It will stay there forever. It will never go back. And the issue is this. The cutoff line is the point where the people above that line can live in that vibration. The line below it, they cannot. Which means if they were incarnated into a fetus, at the moment they were born, they would die. So it's not a punishment. It's the opposite. What the aliens and what the planet is saying is this. This planet is one of the most amazing planets in the cosmos, and it has an energy that no other planet has that can cleanse the cosmos, not just this one place. Because what's going on here, make no mistake, and Leah and many others have told us, the aliens are just like us. Some are a piece of shit and some aren't. And they're all the way in between, just like us, no different. And their cleansing is not just here, it's everywhere. This is the critical point. This is a crucial point. This is the event place where it starts. And what happens then is that person who was next in line, they incarnate in a planet that's running.
Hour number 2 already, ladies and gentlemen. And if you want to check out more of the writing, some of the articles, some of the evidence that Stephen and Evan have put together, please visit ForgottenOrigin.com. That's ForgottenOrigin.com. Guys, is there any other links you want to give out, stuff like that right now?
For the conferences, you need to go to alienancestry.net. And then you'll see that the next one, which is next weekend, is chapter 11. And then we've also got chapter 12 up there as well. So, yeah, and you've got links to go to the conferences there. So they're the main two. Yeah, that's the one.
There you go.
Yeah.
Chapter 11, chapter 12, and there's the glyphs there. Now, guys, towards the end of this show, I haven't kind of told you yet because I hadn't confirmed it. I've got a little surprise for both of you come the last 5 minutes of the show. You're going to like it. You're going to like it, okay? But before the break, we were talking about this place, the changes that are about to occur. I was sharing with you guys during the break that I've noticed myself changing a lot past 18 months, 2 years. But it's hard. It's hard, right? Because we can't affect anyone else's journey. And I see other people, and this isn't like me saying I'm better than anyone else or anyone's worse than me, but from what I observe, a lot of people are struggling to make a shift to the positive type of mindset. Would you agree?
Yeah, I do. And I think what we said during that break was spot on. It's really important. We're talking about the fact that, well, we both know people who get heavily involved in the conspiracy theories, the pedophilia groups, the cabal,
adrenochrome,
and all this, and obviously COVID. And I've got to make the point, people need to understand, since we knew about this about 4 years ago, we've been saying constantly that the one thing that the main group are going to do is they're going to envelop you in negativity. And what I think we need to talk about, and I did have a conversation with the elders about how do you get a ticket to ride. And one of the things that became very obvious to me was never to wallow in negativity. And I'm going to shock a few people because that includes people who are fighting against the conspiracy theories. And a lot of these conspiracy theories are legitimate. I'm not arguing that. But what you are actually doing is you're bathing in negativity. I understand you're fighting against it, but, you know, when you get in the bath, you get wet.
You're also helping to propagate that negative message, you know, by sharing it online. And, you know, I know people that probably get up first thing in the morning and they dive into all those topics, and it's all they post about all day on Twitter. I see it all the time, and I have to wonder to myself, what effect does that have on you when you're staring at some of the darkest content in the world? And it's not that it's not true, because that darkness is real, but what does it do to a person when you're consuming that much 24/7? That can't be good for you.
It can't be, because you'll end up drowning in the negativity. And even though you're trying to fight against this, I know many people are doing this, and they're doing it for all the right reasons, and it's never meant to be a criticism. And I suppose under normal conditions it would be okay, but you've got to understand now, you can fight. A bit like I said at the day when we had people up there saying, we're going to fight against this, we're going to get lawyers to fight the government. You cannot fight a group when you're playing a game of soccer, when the referee works with the other team and the other team can pick the ball up and you can't. You can't beat them. And what happens is you become frustrated, you become angry, you despair, and you are now just like them. Because the problem that people don't understand, I remember, and I think I need to talk about this a bit, I remember having a conversation with someone when I was first told about this by a person who ended up turning against us, and that happened a lot with a lot of people. Yeah. I did have a conversation about the number of people who were going to be part of this change. And this is before COVID. And I can tell you now, I was given a percentage, and it was 2%. And I remember all the way down, I argued from 25% down, because when I was first asked this question, the person involved said to me, well, what do you think? How many people do you think will evolve and stay here? And I said 25%. And my argument was that most humans are primarily good people. And they have many good attributes. They're not perfect. And no one's asking for perfection this time. And I said, you know, they love other people and they care about others and they do this stuff, and it's 25%. And I remember later I spoke to another elder about this, and he said, well, tell me, of those 25% of people you're talking about, how many of them are actually thinking that what you're doing is stupid? I laughed and said most. He said, well, then why are they here? They come here, they incarnate each time, and I was told this many times, to do two things. To learn about love and magic, they are, by the way, the same thing, and learn about why you're here. Now, a lot of humans have got the love part right, but they think this stuff is rubbish, and they think it's stupid, and they criticise people and denigrate them and say bad things about them, and it creates all this negativity, and that's a bad thing. Now, what's really important is it doesn't matter whether you're for or against this, but if you're against someone else, you're in the wrong place. You can only be for something now. This is what I was told. And it was really strange because it went like this. I remember having this conversation, and I said to this person, and when they said they've got to learn both things, I said, all right then, I'm not accepting 2%. I think there's 10%. I said, I reckon 10% of the population on this planet get something about love, are trying to get there, and understand something about what's going on and trying to work it out.
Yep.
And I said, I think that's a fair call. And I remember this person saying to me, oh, do you? And I was smiling when they said that, and it was an elder. And I knew when an elder smiles at you, that means you're in deep shit, aren't you, Evan?
Yep.
So I sort of argued the point. I said, yes, I do. And then they asked me a question, and I'm going to put this question to you now because this is how we went through this. He said this. He said, do you have to deal with fools and idiots on this planet? I sort of laughed and said, yeah, that's a given. That's just part of the deal every day. And he said, do you know people that are evolved like you think they are, and they get upset by this and they talk about it? I said, yeah, I hear that often. And he said, tell me, what do they say? Oh, well, they say this person said this and said that and said something else. And then he asked me the very important question that killed me twice, because he asked me twice. He said, do you think that thoughts have an energy? And I quietened up for a second because I thought, oh, God, I don't think this is going to go well. I said, yes, they do. And he said, well, what are those people doing right now? Don't you think the world has enough negative energy? Why are they talking badly about other people and infecting people who don't even know about it, about their story and about the fact that this person is a bad person? I said, where is that evolved? Is that what they came here to do? I said, now, if that person was talking directly to that person and made that comment, we accept that. But talking about other people behind their back, we do not accept at all. That is not evolved, it's not sophisticated, and it's not required. She said, so take them out of your equation. I said, all right, I will. I'll now claim 5%. I said, because I don't go around running down other people. And he smiled at me again and said, oh, really? And I thought, oh, God, surely not. I'm sure I'm fine here now. I'm okay on this. I said, I'm talking about the 5% that don't go around bitching about other people behind their back and don't say negative things because they're past that. And he started by saying this, I want to ask you the same question. Do you believe thoughts have an energy? And I thought, hang on, this is dog. Yeah, I thought, yeah, okay. No, we said this before. Yeah, I'm happy with that. And he said, okay, now I'm going to ask you a question, not about others, but about yourself. I said, I'm okay. And I felt like, I'm all right here. I'm okay. I can do this. Yeah, go for it, I said. He said, do you ever run into fools and idiots? I thought, hang on, we're doing this again. This is like, what is that, Groundhog Day, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. I thought, we're doing this again. He said, no, answer the question. I said, yeah, I do. He said, what do you think of these people when they do this stuff? I said, well, I think it's ridiculous. I said, but I don't say it to other people. I just think it. And he paused and said, so you have a thought, do you? A negative thought? I said, oh, no. He said, does it matter if there's words put to it? And I spent a bit of time before I had to say it. I said, no, it doesn't matter. He said, well, what use are you to us? He said, here you are thinking negative thoughts about people who are making mistakes. Let them make the mistakes. It's not your mistake. Why are you taking ownership of that mistake? And because you're thinking about this, you're harboring negative thoughts. What use are you to us if you're thinking negative things about people who are making mistakes and they'll be punished or they'll be rewarded according to that? It's got nothing to do with you. What happens to people now is their own concern. Each person jumps into their own river. It's not yours. So tell me, why are you making negative thoughts about these people and dragging yourself back down? So I need to say something. We were saying this before about people getting involved in conspiracy theories. I understand why you're doing it, but you've got to understand something. You're swimming in a sea of negativity. And it doesn't matter. Once you're in that sea, we all get wet. You can't come out dry. And that's the trick in this equation. A lot of people have said to me, they've heard about this and they've proudly boasted that I'm fully evolved. And we just smile and thinking, I say to them this, I said, I want you to think about something. Do you believe in reincarnation? Oh, yeah, I believe in that. Well, why are you still here? I said, because the ones who are fully evolved, they don't come back. I said, you got to remember, this class we have on Earth today is not 7A, it's 7F. This is the mob, all of us, we're the ones who failed every other time and didn't ascend. Now, yeah, there's a couple who've come back to help us out, but the great majority of us are the 7F class. So therefore, under those conditions, you've got to clean yourself up. This is what this is all about. And I want to pick up something else you said in the break. And this deals with the fact we have family and friends who think the sort of stuff we're dealing is ridiculous and stupid. And you're concerned, and so am I, about their welfare. But remember this, you've got to look after yourself first. Let's get this straight. Because while you're getting involved in all this negativity, you are not ready. We are now, each person has got to clean up their own boat first. But while you're doing that, I want to share with you a question I was asked when we went to that conference. And I want to thank the two people who organised that conference because they copped so much grief and so much attack. They could have told us not to come, but they stood by us. And I really appreciate them for that because they got a lot of grief too, nearly as much as us. And at the end of the conference, there was a question and answer session. And this guy stood up and said, I've got family and close friends who think I'm an idiot. And I think I'm an idiot even coming to this conference. He said, how can I convince them that this person went through the ceremony too, that we all did together, and they knew it was true? How can I convince them to see this is correct? And I told them, you can't. It's not your job to anymore. The world has changed now. Each person is responsible for themselves. I'm sorry, this part of the equation, you have to get yourself ready. And when you do that, you do one other thing. And I've told every group this, and I probably said this last time we were together again, is that each person who sees this is correct is obliged over the next couple of years, and it's not long. I know roughly exactly how long it is, and I'm not going to say that, but I know it's not far away. You are obliged to be involved in a process called seed dreaming. It's very important you understand what seed dreaming is. It's where you take seeds, and it's in the Gospel of Thomas too. It's in the Gnostic scriptures. Jesus spoke about this too.
I think they're talking about mustard seeds.
Yeah, you throw the seeds everywhere. You go out, and when people are talking about COVID, you go up to them and say, no, COVID is a good thing. And that'll stop them for a second. And I'll tell you why it's a good thing. Because without COVID, I don't believe the world would have been changed. So people have said to me often, and they're right about this, do you think you would have got 15 to 20 million people if COVID was here? And the answer is no. Because what COVID did is it showed a lot of people, this is pathetic. The mob that are ruling us are manipulating us, and I can see now it's wrong. I want somewhere else to go. I want a light at the end of the tunnel. Well, we provided one. And because people could see this was wrong, they went out into the middle of night in Iceland and meditated and aimed their meditation at the magic box, which was actually the full rock. They did that because in front of them, they could see a festering boil. They could see the sickness. And if we hadn't seen the sickness, would they have felt the need to go out in the middle of the night and invest in something where the people who were prosecuting it were saying, oh, I don't know if it's going to happen. Maybe nothing's going to happen. Would they have done that if COVID hadn't been there? And I'm inclined to think no. So that's the first thing I would say when you have that conversation. And the second thing you need to say is tell them to go to our website. Well, even though we're putting this conference up, you know that all the articles we talk about are free to look at.
Yep.
So if you want to see all that stuff, but you don't want to pay the money, what we should do is not let them see it so we can make the money. But that would be with them doing what they do. No, we leave it free. So if they don't want to pay the $26 to hear it, they can still go to our website and see the videos and see the empirical proof. And then what they can do then is those people might see that and might listen to what that person said and their belief. And they might say at the day, what a load of shit. But 2 months from now, something might happen where they might think back to the moment when you threw that seed and it will germinate.
I was talking about this to the sorry to interrupt you, Stephen. I was talking about this exact thing. I think it was last night after the show with the Discord people. I was kind of laughing because I've seen people go away really angry at me over the time doing the show. 1,500 episodes. I've seen people come and go, and what fills me with the most joy is when I see old friends coming back. And it's not to say, oh, you were right, Kev, but that for me is the growing of the seed. That's them. Whatever I said at that point, it wasn't for them at that time, but over time, they've gradually came back, you know?
Yeah, that's the trick with this. And in the Gospel of Thomas, when they're throwing the seeds, Jesus said some will land on rocks, some will land on concrete, but some will land in the soil. And sometimes it'll take a little while to germinate, but it will germinate. You've got to remember, we had 15 to 20 million people where that seed is already germinated. Now, that's 15 to 20 million people that were involved in that ceremony. They are the ambassadors of this change.
And these were people all around the world, wasn't it?
Yeah,
taking part in the meditation.
Well, this is a global thing. If you listen to the Hopi, and we've read that out, and the Mayans, they will all talk about a time in the future when where there will be a change, and everyone has to decide where they go. It's even in the Bible.
Okay, but let me ask you something here, because I've brought this up a couple of times on the show, since you were on last time, and when I rewatched the show, you kind of threw away comment. Kind of like it's going to be hard, like, and then you moved on, and it's almost like when I was watching you, you were, dare I say it, looking at the hard times ahead, like visualizing them. You know what's coming roughly. I'm not going to ask you the time, but it was on my mind. You know, I should have asked you that time in the show. What is it that we have to go through? How bad? I mean, it's going to get a lot worse, right? And I don't mean to scare people out there, but we haven't seen anything yet, right?
No, we haven't, and that's the point. Look, our elders, I think I told you once, we had one elder, Arnie Minnie Mace, will be coming back on soon, who told us the first sign of the change will be the run on toilet papers, and that was 5 years before it happened. These things we know about, and it wasn't just the run on toilet papers. Look, it's a very simple equation. I use this quote a lot, don't I, from June?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Fear is the mind killer.
Fear is the mind killer, and that's what this has to be. They have to create fear, and they will create it. Look, the ship is sinking. Their ship is sinking, but they want to take everyone down with them. And they will continue to do this. And look, I have no doubt, and I know I said this quite some time ago. I said there will be pandemics and there will be a war. And that's what we're building up towards now. I mean, I know Australia right now is insulting the Chinese government on a daily basis. And a lot of people saying, well, why is... In fact, we've had people in Australia actually saying the drums of war are beating and our young are having to get ready to go to war in China. We're getting politicians saying that, aren't we?
Yeah.
That includes, one of the politicians was a politician involved in defence. And then the Prime Minister was asked about that and he said nothing. He just let it go because he's letting them go. This is part of what they're going to do. I mean, honestly, you can nearly time it. I mean, even in Australia where we have one COVID case, it always ends in another state. And once one state's locked down, then another one gets locked down again. And it will go further. It'll go into economic chaos. It will go into political chaos. It will go into military chaos. There'll be more warfare that takes place. The Middle East will never settle down. It's not supposed to. And the information, well, don't forget, in about 3 or 4 months, a group of allied nations are going to sail their ships up the coast of China. Why? What's the point in that? I mean, for God's sake, obviously right now China's not happy with us. So why are we throwing acid in their face by telling everyone we're all going to get together and sail up your coast and let you know we're going to thumb our noses at you? And they're doing this so that everyone becomes fearful. And there's no way they're not going to do this, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not being the bearer of bad news because, let's be honest, so far we're scoring pretty well with our predictions. We haven't got one wrong. And I'm not boasting about that because it wasn't us. We were told this stuff. We're just relayers of information. But I will ask, not this time around, but I am going to ask Mezra, if not so much this time, I want to stay with the good news, but we need to understand that stuff for one reason. Not so we can agonise over it, not so we can become concerned about it or fearful, so we're aware of the games they're playing so we don't get sucked into them.
Absolutely.
Because this is what this is about. Whatever they throw at us, you've just got to say this, and I've said this many times. I've given what I think is the most important word you should use when negativity affronts you and it stands in your face. You should say the word whatever, which means I just don't care. I'll deal with it, but I'm not going to invest in it. And that's what this is about. Because once you invest in it, whether you become fighting against the fact that pedophilia is still running on this world, and I know that now the mainstream are making jokes about the fact that people believe in that sort of stuff. Of course it's happening, and of course it's wrong. But that's as far as your involvement should go. I mean, if you want to fight against it, and you can without becoming emotionally invested in it, fine, but I think that's going to be hard. If you want to fight that, you can, but you've got to be so careful. Let them do what they're going to do and say to yourself, well then, if that's what you're going to do, I pity you. Because that means you've made a statement. When that vibration takes place, I can see where your soul's going to go to. You've got to keep that in the back of your head, that the Earth, the planet itself, is now capable of looking after itself. Don't panic about that, because once that ceremony was successful, it is out of their hands. What they've got is 2 years, and the reason why they've got 2 years is because you and I, Kev, we need time to accommodate ourselves to this higher vibration, because we're not fully ready for it either. None of us are. None of us could live in 6,000, whatever it is at the moment, or off the planet like it was for a day. We couldn't live in that for month after month. It would knock us around because we're not evolved enough. We've got to clean ourselves up.
Well, this past week, it ties in with the Schumann. I've been really struggling to sleep. Like, really struggling.
I've had maybe one good night's sleep.
Yeah, me and my son, we were sat watching movies all night, and then the daylight came, and we're both sitting there, and it's insane.
It's the number one symptom of just dealing with
the change.
Everything's
look, you're shaking. What's happening to each of us, every one of us? Because remember this, Kev. I want to. Maybe you are the perfect soul that's here. No one else is, but you've got to remember this: that everyone here has been here time after time after time, and the reason we come back is because we have not resolved our own inner demons, and until we get in control of those, and here's the point. How do you resolve your inner demon? You embrace it. You don't spit at it. You don't fight at it. You don't yell at it. You just say, you're still here. Okay, whatever. You have got to learn that word, whatever. When whatever comes in front of you, you look at it and smile and say, I will not invest in it. I'll not agonize over it. I'm aware of the fact it's wrong, and I'm aware of the fact the world is cleaning itself. This is what you've got to understand. When you see that photograph of the film, rather, of Uluru exploding, that was pure, unadulterated energy that is of the highest level. It's actually the breath of God that went around our planet. And for 1.5 seconds, when that explosion takes place, if you look very carefully at it, the light intensity is the same on the edges as it is in the middle. And I reckon that light intensity would have been the same on the whole of that planet for 1.5 seconds when the switch was turned on.
One more segment to go, guys. One segment. We'll be right back. Should never ever say this about your own show, but this has been amazing. And it's not because of me, it's because of our brilliant guests we've got here today. And I'm going to freak them out, being strong, macho Australians. Guys, I love you two to bits. You cause me to think. You confirm a lot of things that I have rattling about in my head. And we've got to get inside with it. We've got to embrace this kind of more emotional side. So guys, in a totally heterosexual kind of way, I do have man love for both of you. Total admiration, guys, I'm telling you.
It's sort of interesting. We were talking in the break there about the fact that the males on this planet have got a little bit more to do than the females to get on this road that the Mayans talk about, or the fast-flowing river that the Hopi talk about. There's something intrinsically in males that is a hindrance to getting away from this anger that's inside people. And like you said in the break there, we want to make it clear to people listening that neither yourself, Kev, or us make any claims to being enlightened. And look, I'm not. And Kev and I were both saying about the fact that, and I believe neither of us would be ready yet to even ascend when this takes place. And I was also saying too that when we do presentations, when we did do them before COVID turned up, the percentages were always 10 to 5% men and the rest were women. And when you just said that, it reminded me, we had a person on a long time ago. He was actually there's a show in Australia called Bondi Rescue, which has gone around the world. Yeah. And one of the main lifesavers there is called Harry's. And he's been in contact. He's following our stuff and he believes in what we're doing and he's trying to get all the lifesavers. He talks about it all the time to them, and some of them are listening about that. We've gone to see him a few times and we got him to come on the show and did a show once. And there was something about Harry's that's quite unusual. And I had him on primarily because he was a male role model for the future, right? And one of the things he said, it reminded me of what you just said, is every time when I spoke to him on the phone, he would always finish by saying, a male, by the way, an Australian male, how much he loved me. And of course, me being my normal Australian male, there's no way I was going to say that back to him. And I kept saying to him, mate, if you keep this up, one day I can see me slipping and saying it back, but I'm going to be trying really hard not to do that. Because in Australia, the word love, we use it for our partner once every month or so. We use it when our football team does well.
Scotland is once a year. Once a year I tell Anne how I feel about her, if she's lucky. You know, we're the same as you Aussies. That's why we get on so well, guys, I'm telling you.
I think there's a lot of similarities there. So we really men don't actually do this sort of stuff. It's called the feelings thing, isn't it? Yeah. But women seem to be much better at it than us.
I mean, there's a reason when I was studying suicide prevention that, the stats have probably changed because it's been a while since I've done it, but they said every woman had about 4 to 5 friends they could turn to if they were thinking of suicide. And the average man in Australia had 0.5.
Yeah. Half a person.
I love their mates, but they all sit at the pub watching the footy.
Oh, yeah. And
but they don't talk.
Yeah.
They don't talk about anything inside.
Same in Scotland, guys.
Well, I try to, and everyone just ignores me. But
it's the same in Scotland. It really is. And I do a show on a Sunday with he's a deliverance minister. I've got another couple of guys there. We all hook up together and we get guests on and things. But I've made a point of telling them that I love them every time we finish now. And last week I got a love you back. So it's starting to work. It's starting to work. Yep. There you go.
There you go. You're walking down the path of Harry's. And what's interesting with Harry's, I've got to know him quite well now. And on the show, he's made out as a person who's always smiling and always joking. He's a very deep thinker. But what I've found with Harry's is I don't think he has an aggressive bone in his body, but he spends his life as a warrior. And this is what I liked about Harry's, because he puts his life on his line when he goes out. In fact, he's set the world record. He's saved more people, I think it's around 6,500 people, and done more resuscitations than anyone on the planet.
Wow.
And he goes out in waves that are 12, 15 foot high to go and save some moron that went swimming out when you could see you're going to die in there. That's a tidal wave coming forward. I'll go for a swim.
And half the time the people he's saving have never been in the ocean for a whole life.
Come on, you Aussie guys.
Don't swim there, and they go and swim there.
If you guys were to see a tsunami coming, most Australians would grab a surfboard, right?
They would.
They would. You know it.
And then Harry's would have to go out there and rescue them when they're doing it. Now, my point is that there is a guy that is really what we would look upon as doing a real macho job, but everyone is a client and everyone he speaks to he loves. And he told me, one time he told me about the fact that this young girl had fallen off there and he spent 45 minutes resuscitating, trying to bring her back, but he couldn't, and he lost her, and she was 15. And I said to him once, does that affect you? And he said, yes, of course it does, because I love everybody. He said, but then I've got to realise that after I see that person, there'll be another person I can help, and I've just got to put that past me. And he's a guy that never gets angry, never says a negative word to everyone, always smiles and tells everyone that he loves them. And the strange part is that I think he actually does. I put him on there to give males an idea of what we're supposed to get at. And as I watched it, the one thing that became glaringly obvious to me was that, oh God, I'm in a big problem here. I've got a lot of work to do. So let's be honest about this. No one, neither yourself or us, is standing here and pontificating from the pulpit. No, ladies and gentlemen, we're up the back seats at the moment. We can see the pulpit. I spoke about a gentleman, a male. I think he's fine.
Yeah.
He's the only male Australian, I think, that has already got a ticket to ride.
Let me do a little shameless plug. If people want to see that and his experiences of visiting the Carry On Glyphs with us, if you go to our ancestry.net to the streams page, you can subscribe. And if you subscribe, I think it's $15.99 a month, you'll be able to see those shows, everything that's come before. Plus, if you pay monthly, you'll see every conference coming up. Oh. So, I suggest to people, if they want to see an example of what we're talking about there, subscribe in, then you'll get to see Harry's as well.
I'd like to apologise for that shameless plug on everyone's behalf.
No, listen, guys, you have given up your time to come on here. It's no shameless plugging. Use this platform. Get people over there. I have thoroughly enjoyed the conferences that I've been able to attend. It's been some of the best online conference material I've come across, and you've got to appreciate. I see a lot of stuff with different guests coming on, but you guys and the people you have on, they knock it out the park. They really do, and I can't recommend it highly enough. And even if you weren't here, it's not just because you're here. I'm saying this honestly. If you've got like $20 to spare, throw it on this, because it's going to be enlightening. It really, really is.
There's something I wanted to add to that story about Harry's. There was quite interesting. We took him to the carry-on glyphs, and he brought his son along. His name is Billy. And he's actually put this up. He's put. I didn't know he was going to put this up. I thought he wouldn't tell people. He's put it up publicly. When we were there, I gave them ceremony because I looked upon Harry's from Bondi Rescue the same way I'd look upon a tribe. Because when they go onto their country, which is the beach there, they lay down their lives to look after the people who come onto their land. And that's how original people used to do things. So I gave them a proper ceremony. And I spoke about the fact we're going on the country and we're going to see all different types of original people, because there are little people, there are tall ones, and all sorts like that. And what's really interesting was about 10 minutes later, Harry's son, who was 6 at the time, come up to Harry's and said, "Daddy, look over there. There's a Yowie man, a little Yowie man, and he's all covered in hair. I can't see his face, but he's standing there right now." Now, the Yowies, the little people called the Bitars, they love children and they follow children. He was actually seeing the little ones that people have heard about. And I said to Harry's at the time, "I've been at Carry-On now 40 times, never seen them." He goes there once and sees them. And what was interesting was there's a video that Harry's put up later of his son talking about the fact that he saw them. Now, what he didn't know, and no one else knew at the time, and we did, is his description. He said, "I couldn't see their eyes. They had hair over their body." We call up our way, we call the little people, and we call them Nimbinja. And it comes from the word Nimbin, which is what, there's a place there that's sort of the hippie capital of Australia. It's called Nimbin. It's named after Nimbinja. And what Nimbinja means, little hairy people, and you can't see their eyes. So this kid was describing, he's never been given a description of exactly what they look like. And he said, it's hiding in the tree and he looks like the tree. There were actually reports of white fellas talking about the little people, because they were here. Everyone knows they were here. And they said they were the masters of ceremony and they could turn themselves into trees. Now, this kid knew nothing about this, and I've seen him, Harry's done interviews with him since, where he swears he saw a little person standing there at the carry-on site. And of course, the reason they were there is because there's a subdivision taking place in there and they're feeling uncomfortable. So it's really interesting. In our country, you've got to understand something, ladies and gentlemen, that this magic I speak about, oh, Evan's found it. There it is, chapter 5. It's in chapter 5. Okay, this magic we speak about still exists. I mean, you've got a little kid that's seeing beings that can disappear and they're still here and he can see them. So he can see them, children can anyway, but I've got to make the point that the sort of stuff we're talking about, I've used that word magic interposably with the word love. But I just want to share something with you for those people who think, why are you talking about magic so much? And the reason is because our elder, who's passed on, Kano, that's what he did, didn't he, Evan? Mm-hmm. He did magic in front of us time after time after time. I think I might have mentioned, if I haven't, on one occasion we sat down with Graham Hancock and his wife Santa.
Wow.
And we sat round together. We sat round with we sat round with some other people in Kano, and Kano turned up at the beginning. We had this big fire pit, and he came up done up old way, all painted up. We didn't know he was coming, and he sat in the fire pit and he spoke in language and he said a few things in English. Walked back one step, walked past us and Graham, didn't he? Mm-hmm. Walked back one step. Then when he walked back the second step, he completely disappeared in front of all of us. And Graham, for the first time ever, couldn't speak for a while, and that's unusual for Graham Hancock. He's not bad at talking, I can tell you. I'm not too bad at it. I had nothing to say too. And we just stood there, every one of us. And then he reappeared, didn't he, behind Christine, about 40, 50 metres away with this huge smile on his face. And people came up to me and said, go and ask him how he did it. I said, I'm not doing that, because he won't tell me. He'll ask me a question I can't answer, because that's what he always does to me. I'm not going to do it. But the next day, somebody did go up and ask him, how did you do that? And he laughed and he smiled. He said, that trick. He said, I just walked behind the curtain. He said, any person on this planet can do what I can do. He said, I just know where the curtain is, but you can do it too. Why don't you? Now, I can give you another example when we went on the country 3,000 k's away from where he was. And 4 hours after we finished, he rang us up and said, you were on country today, weren't you? And I said, yeah. I said, but it was not your country. And then he told me, he said, you did that ceremony with the rocks, didn't you? And I said, yeah, I did. He said, then the owl flew out, didn't it? I said, yeah, it did. Evan picked up the feather of the owl, didn't he? I said, yeah, he did. He said, well, why didn't you smoke yourself? And he said, because of Auntie Bev. He said, because Auntie Bev's unwell. He said, that's not the rule. You were given ceremony. Why didn't you smoke yourself? And at that stage, before I got into more trouble, because I was getting into trouble for this, I asked him the obvious question. I said, Kano, you're 3,000 k's from here. We were on country 4 hours ago. How do you know everything we did? And it's a valid question. And this was the only time he gave me a decent answer. He said, that's simple. He said, when the owl left, he told another animal, and that told another animal. And right now I'm sitting here on my veranda, and I've got a red kangaroo next to me, sitting alongside me, and he's telling me everything you did. And then he finished by saying this, and the spirits have told me to tell you, if you ever go on the country again and you don't smoke yourself, what other ceremony you do won't matter, because I'll kill you. So never walk on the country again without smoking yourself. And then he said goodbye and hung up.
Wow.
So ladies and gentlemen, what I'm talking about is this future. I wanted to share this with you before we finish up. I wanted to give you a sampling of what this future will be about. This is really the important part of this. What is there for those people who make the effort to clean themselves up? And we've all got to do it. We've got to learn the word whatever, and we've got to learn that we never become angry or emotionally invested in things that are unfair. What you get out of it is you get to find out, if I was to offer you a new flat screen TV or the ability to be able to disappear and to talk to animals, any normal human being would say, please give me those skills. And if you said the flat screen TV, leave now, please, there's no hope. You don't deserve to be here. That is what they're offering us in the future.
It's crazy, Stephen. You don't know this. You don't know this, but I've been actively trying to get an animal whisperer onto the show. Somebody that talks to animals, communicates with the animals. They were meant to be on a Monday, but it fell through, but it's coming up in the next couple of weeks. And just when you said that, there are goosebumps again, you know.
Let me tell you a story while we're doing this, because we had a sign recently, didn't we, Evan? You knew I was going to talk about this.
Oh, yeah.
We had a sign. Now, my totem is the magpie, okay? I'm a blackfellow, as I said, that's my totem. About 3 weeks ago, we were sitting out the back, and this magpie came, a young one, it was very fresh, had fresh feathers on it, and it started walking between us. Now, I had a magpie a long time ago that used to walk with me everywhere. And on one occasion, when we left the door open, it came into our house. When I walked in there, it was sitting in the lounge chair looking around at everything. I walked up to it, because we don't feed them. I just put it between my hands and took it through the whole house and showed us everywhere in the house, because it spent all its day hanging out the backyard, backs of our place, just looking inside, and it wanted to come in. And I remember my wife was in the bedroom, and I called out to my wife, we have a visitor, and I brought it in a magpie in my hands, and she did get a shock. So I've had a link with magpies for a long time, but this one was even more unusual. It was a sign, by the way, and later on that day we had a major event in getting this out. What happened was it started walking around between our feet, and then it was catching a few grasshoppers and walking around. And then it got very friendly. I was sitting in the chair there, and it just jumped on top of my arm, didn't it, Evan?
It did.
For the next half hour, it just sat there, and it was about about 10 centimetres away from my face, and it was looking directly at me. And I'm looking at this massive beak, which is so sharp, and I've got two eyes, and his beak is about 3 centimetres away from my eyes. And I'm thinking, my God, if this bird turns right now, I'm going to go blind. And it stayed there for half an hour, hopped off once, didn't it, Evan?
Yep, just the
And
one.
went over with Evan, because there were a lot of grasshoppers there at that particular time. And Evan's trying to catch the grasshoppers, and the magpies beside it, jumping into where the vegetation is, going in head first, grabbing the grasshoppers, and everyone's passing them over. Then when it finished, it came back and sat there on my arm again for another 10, 15 minutes. In fact, it stayed there for so long, we went inside and it eventually left us, and it's never come back. Never seen it since. Now, there is no way in the world that bird was wild, and its two parents were up in the trees calling it, weren't they?
Yeah, the whole time.
Calling it, saying, get away from there, for Christ's sake. And every time it called, it would crane its neck and look directly at them and listen to everything it said, by the way, because they can speak.
Yep.
Okay? And at the end of it, it just stayed with me. And it was giving us a message. Now, this is the way of the future. There's a show on at the moment called Sweet Tooth where people are turning into animals. We will be turning back into animals. We may not have horns, but we will start to communicate with animals like Kano did, and like we did for half an hour. Now, the problem was with that communication, when the animals come to Kano, he can understand them. Well, I couldn't understand what the animal was trying to tell me, but it certainly was there telling me something, because most of the time when it was sitting on my arm, it was looking directly at my two eyes, and that beak is so big.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. But we ended up saying, look, we've got the message, thank you very much. So in the future, those sorts of things I'm talking about, the animals becoming one with us, and us being able to talk to the animals like Dr. Dolittle, it's not a lie. Kano spoke to that red kangaroo and he told him about Evan picking up that feather. And he warned us that we would both be punished. And Evan, you were sick for about the next 2 years, weren't you?
Yeah.
Full time. We were both going to get punished. And we were, because we broke law. And Kano rung us up to explain we'd broken the law and the spirits weren't happy. So that backs up once again about the fact that we're not perfect. We're getting a lot of mistakes. But in the future, everyone will find their totem again. Every human on this planet has an animal totem. No. And we've lost our totems. This is part of what we're going to find in the future. You will be able to find the skills, the magic that we talk about that is part of this planet is going to become part of us. You've got to remember, in the past, Indigenous people, the person in the tribe that was always respected the most was the shaman, the magic person. And nobody ever questioned the fact that their magic wasn't true, because it was.
Now guys, I am going to have to jump in here because, Evan, can you tell people really quickly about the upcoming conference, and then I'm going to surprise you both with something really special. There you go.
Yeah, so this is chapter 11. So we've got, if you go to ouralienancestry.net, it's $26 Australian. I don't know how that compared.
Cheap everywhere else, mate.
Cheap everywhere else, yeah. Dollar's never that great. So yeah, we've got Paul Anthony Wallace, which is the expert on the Bible and Genesis. We've got Uncle Alan Parsons, me and Dad, obviously.
And
Leah. And she'll be the host and speaker, and then we'll also be interviewing Sarah and Austin about the video about the UFO.
And what happened to them the night before.
Yeah. So that's going to be quite interesting.
That's important too. What happened the night before.
So, unfortunately, the times aren't great for Scotland and the UK.
Oh, it's okay. It's midnight, man. That's when I'm coming into my prime. I'm up all night anyway, so it's good.
But once you get a ticket, you can watch it over the next month. So, yeah, you might catch the end of it or something, but don't worry.
I'll be there, guys.
Trying to get onto it, contact Leah. She'll show you how to get onto it.
Guys, I'll be there. But listen, I have got something lined up here. I mentioned at the start of the show the work that you guys are doing, and I am very, very sorry if I offended you, Stephen, by calling you a white fella. Okay, I honestly I had no idea. It's not just you two guys who have really opened my eyes to the wonders and magic of Australia. I've had Uncle Donnie with me along the way, and I've got Auntie Luna here with me right now on a call. And I know that she would like to say a couple of words to both of
All
you.
right.
And she's down under. So, Luna, are you there?
G'day, Kev. G'day, Steve and Evan. I'm a Wiradjuri Gamilaroi goanna snake water lily woman. And
Oh, wow.
me and Donnie, Uncle Donnie, we want to thank you personally for the hard work that you're doing. And we know it's a hard path. And we want to commend you for the way you convey all the information to the rest of the world in a way that we find it hard to do. Yeah, and we love you. Thank you.
Oh, mate, that's really nice to hear. We spent a lot of time in Gamilaroi country. I taught up near Moree for about 6 years and had a fantastic time. It was the best part of my teaching career, teaching blackfellas. Loved it, every minute of it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
You come from great country, and our ways are coming back, Arnie. Our ways are coming back. They're all come back to us now. We always knew, and I know you know this too, we knew they were coming, and we knew that they were welcome to come, and they were going to learn from us, and we also knew we were going to take it back again. This is what it's all about. So biggest thank you, and thank you so much, mate. Kev, I appreciate that. We always like to speak to elders. Thank you. Great.
No,
You're
guys.
a shining star for both of you. Are a shining star for us, and the struggle we have walking in this world and trying to maintain all the things that you were saying and staying in love. When you get up there and you start talking, it just helps us and reminds us of where we're going, so we don't get lost.
I appreciate that, Arnie. I really do. It means a lot to us. It really does, because all we're trying to do is we're trying to get back our story. We were the ones who began this story. It all began here, and that's why it's starting again here. People have got to remember that. And the people of the old way, the original people, man, we were living in perfection for a long time, and we're going to get back. We're going to get it back, and everyone can join us. Appreciate that, Arnie, big time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wherever you are, ladies and gentlemen, make it TFR. Turn that frown upside down. It's positive from here on in, and we're all going to make it together, or we all fall apart. We're out of here, wherever you are, make it TFR, and did he touch that dial?